Helping Seniors Television, all about improving quality of life for seniors. If you're a senior, know a senior, or plan to be a senior, then this show is for you. It's all about helping you develop your own aging plan so you can age actively and with dignity. Helping Seniors Television from the Helping Seniors Network of information, education, and resources.
I'm Kerry, Fink, and welcome to Helping Seniors Television. On behalf of our president and founder, Joe Steckler, and our entire Helping Seniors team, welcome. Today, we've got a great topic for you. It's actually everything you wanted to know about hearing, but we're afraid to ask. And we're so fortunate to have with us John Roberts, who's a board-certified hearing instrument technologist? Specialist. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Kerry. Hi.
How are you? Good to see you again. And, you know, to me, this is fantastic because we were talking just before the show started. I said, what is the percentage of the population that has a hearing issue? I said, you know, it has to be a significant part of the population. And what would you say that number overall is?
It hovers around 15 or 20%. I believe the last statistic that I looked at was 38.2 million people in the United States have a significant hearing loss.
And then this was the real shocker, was when I asked John to say, well, what percentage of those have ever been treated to see if there could be anything done about their hearing?
That hovers around 25%, roughly.
So that means 3/4 of the people, if I'm saying this right, who have a hearing issue or hearing challenge have not sought any treatment whatsoever for that, and they have probably no idea even what they're missing.
That's very likely. They may have sought treatment but turned it down, or they may have just decided to live their life with a hearing loss. But that's roughly the figure. About 75% of people suffering from a significant hearing loss are doing nothing about it.
You know, and I was asking the question, and I really do want to dive into this a little bit as we talk about hearing and hearing loss. You know, it's one of the five senses. And I said, is it inevitable as we age that we're going to experience some hearing loss? And let me ask that again, now that we have cameras on and we're talking about that.
Yeah, it's pretty, it's not inevitable. Some people will live to a ripe old age with relatively little problem with their hearing. Most people that have lived an active lifestyle are going to develop at least some hearing loss by the time they're 60, 70, 80 years old.
Yeah, and we were joking that those of us who grew up in the era of rock and roll, we probably haven't helped the story much because of listening to all the music loudly. But the statistic is still kind of, to me, it's shocking that 75% of people who have hearing loss significant aren't taking the time to see what options are available to them. And that led me to ask John the question, what would you say the reasons for that are behind it? Is it fear? Is it ego? Is it money? Is it, what are the things that you've experienced? You've been doing this for years and years, so I'm sure you've heard every story that's out there.
Yeah, it's fear, it's money, it's an awareness, not having the awareness that you may have a problem. Hearing loss doesn't happen overnight. It's a very gradual process. Mm-hmm. It's not like you come in on Monday, you hear well, and on Wednesday you're not hearing well. Mm-hmm. It can take 10 or 15 years for you to actually notice that you have a hearing loss. The people around you are likely to notice it, but you yourself will unlikely to actually see that it's a hearing loss. You may think people don't talk right. People are mumbling nowadays. People talk too fast. Those are some of the things that I hear.
Yeah, and when you think about it, though, does it often start with a family member or some close person to somebody saying, hey, listen, you know, you ought to go have your hearing checked? Or what brings people in when they finally say, okay, I need to do something about this?
I'd say family members are generally the ones that are going to notice it most. When you're around somebody for a long period of time every day, you'll notice that they turn the TV up loud, yep, that they don't respond when you're walking away from them or if there's some kind of background noise in the area. And it's very annoying. If you've been around somebody with a hearing loss, it can really kind of get your dander up a little bit when they just don't respond the way they're supposed to. We're humans. We like to communicate. Communication tells us what another person is thinking about us, how well we're respected. And when somebody doesn't respond the way that we think they should, it kind of gets us upset. And this causes a lot of controversy in families. And one of the big side effects of a hearing loss is personal relationships. They can go right down the tubes because of arguments resulting from the hearing loss.
Right. I was going to say you might take an undiagnosed hearing loss as somebody just being flat out rude.
That's absolutely right, Kerry. One of the big problems is that they often don't hear the beginning of a sentence. So as I'm talking to you now, if you didn't hear the words "as I'm," and you started to talk over me, I would take that personally. That would be an affront that you're interrupting me. You're stomping on my words. And this, after happening over and over again, over the days, weeks, months, and years, can fray on a relationship.
You know, it's an anecdotal story, but I thought it was funny. My wife's grandfather had a TV, this was many years ago, had a TV that he would turn up so loud that everybody in the household conspired to get him headphones that he, would mute the TV, but he could have it up as loud as possible. And I guess a lot of times we try homegrown remedies instead of actually attacking the problem itself. And I was going to say that probably happens an awful lot. But what do you think keeps people from, we've had this conversation. You guys at Palm Bay Hearing Aid Center, you've said it before. Listen, come on in. We will test your hearing absolutely free of charge. Let's see what's going on. We'll let you know where you stand. And, how come people don't, you would think it'd be obvious, like, well, let me go check. What are some of the reasons that people don't come in?
Well, of course, there's the personal relationships that they may lose the argument about whether or not they have a hearing loss, and the pride gets a little bit sensitive. There are just issues of the gradual decline of hearing that they just don't recognize it. You may say the TV is rattling the windows, but to them it sounds just perfect. It sounds just fine to them. So they think you're just sensitive, that you have a hearing problem. When in fact their nerves are so frayed that they need a huge amount of volume to hear the television. Now they might say that the price is too high, or I don't want to go through the hassle of wearing hearing aids, or I don't want them to show. But we've seen that regardless of the price, even people that have 100% insurance coverage, the same percentage will come in to get hearing aids.
Wow. And I was going to ask that. I think there are probably, I was going to ask you if that was the case. I would think there's probably a lot of stereotypes out there. We were talking again before the cameras were rolling that typically the images that are shared on TV in an effort to be comedic are they're probably maybe even a little bit more cruel than they intend to be. But, you always have this perception of an older person going, Would you say that again? That's
right, yeah. Hearing shaming, if you will, is common. It's perfectly acceptable in our society and has been for especially since the television generation.
Right.
If you want to depict an older person, have them say, what'd he say? And that's the common classical joke, if you will, about hearing loss. It's a very serious problem with life-changing side effects that can actually cause a tremendous serious health problems, but our society doesn't seem to ponder that very much. You don't hear much about hearing loss.
And we've also had this conversation before that a lot of times somebody may be brought in and they say, oh, listen, mom's got a touch of dementia or something like that. And we learned that maybe that's not the case. Maybe it's just mom can't hear what's going on.
Exactly. The top 10 symptoms of hearing loss are the same as the top 10 symptoms of early onset dementia or Alzheimer's disease. And nobody should even be tested for Alzheimer's until they get a hearing test, especially if there's a verbal part to that test and they're not hearing well. How are they going to perform? But yeah, people will bring their elderly relatives into our facility and suggest that, well, she has dementia. And I may ask them who diagnosed that. Well, nobody did, but she's 85 years old and she's not doing as well as she used to. Well, 85-year-olds can do pretty good if they're hearing well.
Yeah, no, exactly. So let's shift gears a little bit, and we've talked a little bit about, I think, our surprising statistics that more people don't take advantage of figuring out what's available to do with their hearing. And yet what I understand is that with the technology, you have to throw all those old preconceived conditions out the window because it's a whole new day.
Yeah, the technology has come around to the point that we can fit most hearing losses and give them what we would call normal hearing, which is something that we couldn't even suggest a few years ago. The digital age, starting around 20 years ago, began the formatting of a platform of technology that has continued to advance every year to the point now that we have hearing aids that communicate with each other. The right hearing aid knows what the left hearing aid is hearing. The left hearing aid knows what the right hearing aid is hearing. They know when the user is speaking, so they can adjust the person's own voice so it doesn't sound unfamiliar to them. And they scan the environment up to several hundred times per second, looking for speech, looking for background noise, music, television, any other artifacts that might be in the area, and concentrate on that low speech. The people that are talking softly, the people that are walking away from you, the people that talk too fast, and they bring that up to the top. We hear with our brains, we don't hear with our ears. The ears simply send the information to the brain for processing. And it's that area that the hearing aids have focused on. It's called brain hearing. And with the advent of brain hearing, we've been able to put hearing aids on a person that may have a advanced hearing loss and get them hearing very well within a few minutes now.
You know, I was thinking about maybe some of the reason that we have historically had such a problem with hearing aids is I was thinking about not only do you remember all the maybe not so kind characters where grandpa has like the big horn in his ear trying to, hey, what did you say? But even that we remember maybe as kids growing up watching elders play with hearing aids, and they're always like, hey, can you say it again? And then they're trying to turn up the hearing aid, or I got to change the batteries, and they just made them look technologically clunky. And what I have to imagine is that today's world, as we sit in the modern age, has shifted so much over the past few years that even something you might remember for 10 or 15 years ago isn't really a valid perspective today.
Yeah, that's right. Take, for instance, squealing, hearing aids that whistle when you hug somebody or whistle when they're just sitting there minding their own business. That's feedback. The hearing aid is amplifying the sound. It bounces off of the eardrum and gets fed back into the microphone, and that starts a loop that results in squealing. Okay. Which is a problem that I dealt with for 25 years out of my 30 years of doing this. Right. But in the last few years, that has been resolved in almost all cases. Wow. And it's incredibly ingenious, the methods that they've come up to fight that problem. But that's an example of one of the problems that people have seen other people deal with. Maybe their parents had hearing aids and they squealed, and they don't want to be in that type of situation. They don't have to worry about that anymore.
Well, and the other thing is, I think, too, if you're slightly vain, or maybe you're just concerned with your appearance and you don't want to have all these big unsightly things around your ears, these are getting smaller and smaller, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. You really can't see hearing aids if they're fit properly. If you buy the right type of hearing aid and the person that's fitting them takes the cosmetic factors into consideration. But actually, Kerry, people will notice a hearing loss much more than they will hearing aids. You don't walk around looking behind somebody's ear to see if they have a hearing aid. Right. But if somebody is walking over your speech, interrupting you, ignoring you, not responding the right way, you may say, oh boy, Jack's got a problem, I don't know what's the matter with him. You don't know it's a hearing loss, but you're really going to notice. And that results in that person being isolated because they're not getting the feedback from other people that they're used to throughout their life.
And that brings up another question. If we've able to solve the issue about, well, maybe it's not unsightly, and number two, they operate terrifically, I guess another thing people are probably, maybe, I'm guessing, are put off by, well, I don't know if I can afford to do this.
Yeah, there's a lack of insurance coverage, although a lot of companies are coming around. Many people that may not have had insurance a few years ago may find that they do have insurance. Okay. So I'd recommend anybody to call your insurance provider and see if you have some coverage. It's not unlikely that you'll get something. The cost factors, though, are mitigated by the benefits of hearing loss. Let's face it, Kerry, if you have an untreated hearing loss, your chances, even with a mild hearing loss, of getting early onset dementia are over 100% higher. Wow. With a moderate hearing loss, that can go to 300%. With a serious hearing loss or a severe hearing loss, that can go to 600%. How much is that worth? And we have easy payment plans. Anybody can get a hearing aid. We'll find a way to put a hearing aid on practically anybody that comes into our office that's affordable. The holdback of price, may be offset by the benefits of that hearing instrument. And the only way you're going to find out is to come in and get evaluated.
You know, I was going to say, I guess one of the points of success that you must be able to point to is I know you've explained in your office you have a specific hearing test room, chamber, whatever it would be called, that people are able to go into, and you're able to fairly quickly and free of charge evaluate somebody's hearing and just kind of give them a report. And you've also explained before it's important to come in early and often so that you get a kind of a baseline, and you can tell, even if nothing's needed at this point, they can come back a certain time later and see if there's any changes that are going on.
Well, that's right. We all go and get our eyes checked every year, every 2 years. We get our teeth looked at several times a year in some cases. But people tend to ignore their hearing. 9 tests out of 10 that I do, it's the first time these people have had a hearing test since they were in grade school.
Wow.
And once you reach 50 years old, just come on in and get a hearing test. If you notice you have a hearing loss a few years later or decades later, we can compare your results and see at what rate your hearing loss might be advancing, so you can make a better informed decision.
So I imagine, I know that you explained that when you sit somebody down, the process is you doing the hearing test, and then if there is a hearing challenge, you'll start to work with them with the possibility of what options might resolve that for them. And I imagine for many of them, it becomes like night and day as soon as they hear.
Oh, absolutely. When we do a hearing test and somebody has a moderate hearing loss or a moderate severe hearing loss, and we put those hearing aids on them, the looks on their face is priceless. Their jaws just drop. They can't believe what they're hearing in just 1 minute. And that's before we even fine-tune the hearing aids or actually get them adjusted properly. It's just amazing what people see when they first put hearing aids on. It's incredible.
You know, and then on top of that, I was thinking, you've told me just anecdotally some of these amazing advances that you said, well, somebody does have to come in and we need to get them fitted properly the first time. But with many of the options that you have available, some of these can even be tweaked via phone.
Yes, we have remote programming. The initial hearing test, it's important to have that done properly. You need to have that done in a ANSI-approved sound booth. There's no other way to do it. This has been known for 60 years. We have the booths in our office. We have a very large facility with a lot of rooms, so we can separate people. They're not going to be walking over other people or be in the vicinity of other patients at the time that they come in for their hearing test. And it takes a half an hour or an hour to do that test. Once we've done that hearing test, and we fit you with hearing aids, then it's up to you. If you want to come in to get your hearing aids adjusted, we recommend doing that at least once a year. But if you're having a problem, you can just call our office and we'll hook you up to our remote programming. And we can patch right into your hearing aids with our software and adjust them while you're in the environment that you might be having problems in, and tweak the hearing aids and get them adjusted just so.
That's amazing when you think about the technology. Now, another area that I want to cover is that a lot of times you'll flip on the TV and you'll see somebody hawking hearing aids for $99 or $199 or $599. They say, oh, you don't have to spend all that money. Just order these online or whatever. And what say you about those kind of ads?
Well, that's nothing new. That's been around for the whole time since I've been fitting hearing aids. There's 6 companies that produce 90% of hearing aids that people are wearing. And these companies have all been established for upwards of 50 years, some of them over 100 years. And all of their technology is layered, and it's been built upon for decades and decades. These are all patented, exclusive, proprietary technological advancements. And they have common software so that you can go to any hearing aid specialist or any audiologist anywhere in the world and have a common template for programming those hearing instruments and evaluating their performance. These off-the-shelf or over-the-counter hearing instruments are basic amplifiers, which off the top of your head you might think, well, that would work. You want things louder. But you can't control the loudness. So if somebody's loud in a room and it amplifies that loud sound, you're going to tear those things out of your head and put them someplace else. So those hearing aids generally will end up in a drawer. I've not seen any that will perform for a bona fide nerve hearing loss like we deal with.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I also remember you explaining is that Sometimes we think that hearing is just, we'll just turn it up louder and that solves the problem. But actually what you've explained is a lot of times the hearing is that certain parts of your hearing are actually where it's going bad. And that's why you have trouble. Maybe the background noise is what's causing you the problem or things like that.
That's right. Your hearing loss is like a fingerprint. Your hearing loss is, your hearing is unique. It's your individual personal hearing. Most people will have a high frequency hearing loss. 9 out of 10 people that come into my office with a hearing loss have a high frequency. Their hearing is worse in the high frequencies, which is the area that we need for understanding. But if you simply make things louder, if you can picture a hearing loss where you might hear close to normal in the low frequencies, if you amplify everything equally, those low frequencies are going to be over-amplified.
Right.
The high frequencies are still going to be under-amplified, but you're going to have a lot of noise. Most background noise is low frequency. A ship's foghorn is low frequency because it'll travel for miles and miles. If they had a bird tweeting, no matter how loud they made it, it wouldn't travel across the water. So when you're trying to understand somebody and there's a lot of low frequency background noise in the area, that's going to mask the high frequencies that you need to hear. Now, another problem that comes along with the degradation of hearing is in sensitivity. The tolerance for loudness is reduced across the board, where you and I with normal hearing might have a uncomfortable loudness level tolerance of 100, 120 decibels. Somebody with a hearing loss, that could be 80 decibels.
Oh, wow.
So how do you make one person's soft voice loud enough for you to hear it without amplifying that refrigerator motor running over here or that car running in the background? That's part of the secret of the modern hearing aid.
So what I'm hearing is that it's a lot more than just turning up the amp from 5 to 10. There's a lot more nuance in all of this. Yeah,
that might solve your problem while you're watching television for the television, but what if somebody wants to talk to you while the TV is on? Their voice is going to be completely drowned out. If you have the TV loud, if you're wearing headsets, you don't have a chance to hear anybody. That's just furthering your isolation.
You know, one of the things that Joe Steckler, our founder and president, talks a lot about, he talks about making an aging plan. And what he's saying or trying to have us think about when we talk about that aspect of it is that it's important that we consider the things that we're going to run into as we age. So, for example, when we're kids, they say, what do you want to be when you grow up? What kind of, are you going to go to college? What kind of job do you want to have? What are you thinking? And then we get into our earning years. It's like, well, are you going to send your kids to college? Are you going to plan for your retirement? Are you going to do financial planning? And we get to aging, and we got to think about the things that are going to impact us in our later years. And so Joe has always been a strong proponent of this aging plan. And one of the things that I think having a plan does, and it's also maybe one of the things that affects us when we talk about hearing, is most of this is unknown and most of this is fear. So, or misperceptions that cause us to have fear. So just what you've been talking about today as an example, I think wherever we're able to reduce that fear component, like what's the harm in going to Palm Bay Hearing Aid Center, sitting down, taking the time, have your hearing evaluated. There's no pressure. There's no emergency. You can at least discover what your options are and what's possible, and then decide from there.
That's right. And of all the advice that I hear people giving other people, what you're doing here at Seniors Helping Seniors with Joe's advice on making a senior plan, it's one of the best ideas I've ever heard. We do. We plan our retirements. We plan our daily lives, our education, our activities, but then once we're retired and we're out of the workforce, we tend to drop all that. Right. When that's the most important time. I mean, I have patients that will come in, they exercise every day, they eat the right foods, they do everything right, but they're not doing anything about their hearing loss, and that's causing more problems than any of those things. Yeah, and it's easily avoided with a little bit of planning.
I was talking to somebody that does a lot of home health care work. And they were saying, Kerry, you got to understand, somebody turns 55 today, they're quite likely to be here another 45 years. So the question is, what are you going to do with the second half of your life? And I guess the thought process is, wouldn't it be a whole lot more enjoyable if you could hear what's going on? And with these five senses thing, you know, what you talked about, just being able to stay in communication, know what's going on around you, be engaged. I guess the insidious thing is we don't really know that we're having these problems creeping in on us.
Yeah, the lack of awareness is there. Generally, there's going to be a awareness. Mm-hmm. Family members are telling you the TV is too loud. Mm-hmm. Friends are shunning you. Maybe they're acting different. Mm-hmm. You notice that you're asking people to repeat more mm-hmm. than you used to. That awareness is easily put off. It's easy to delay those things. But what part of your life do you want to just give up? Do you want to just give up your social life? Do you want to just give up your memories? Do you want to just throw away your vitality and your energy? And that's what a hearing loss ultimately does.
And yet it's so simple to take a step in the right direction. And even if, that old thing that people love to say, the biggest journey starts with but a single step, but it does seem like, what's the harm in getting your hearing checked? How do people get in touch with Palm Bay Hearing Aid Center?
Oh, they can give us a call. Mm-hmm. They can find us on the internet. Mm-hmm. They can just come into our office.
Okay. So you want to share a phone number?
Sure. Area code 321-369-9900.
One more time.
321-369-9900.
And the website, I believe, is Palm Bay Hearing Aids.
Just Google hearing aids, Palm Bay, and we're all over it.
Okay, well, that's a good advice. Thank you, John Roberts, for taking the time to enlighten us a little bit on the world of hearing. It really does sound like there's a huge world out there to explore. And when you share a statistic like 75% of the people that have hearing loss haven't really taken a step towards they may not even know they have it, but haven't taken a step towards resolving it. Wow, it sure seems like they have options. So make sure you check out Palm Bay Hearing Aid Center. You guys have been friends of the Helping Seniors organization for many years, and I appreciate all that you do to serve seniors in Brevard County. And thank you, viewer, for joining us today. Thank you, John, for being here and sharing with us.
Thank you, Kerry. We appreciate what you're doing for the seniors and for our patients.
Thank you. And we'll see you next time on Helping Seniors TV.
I'm Joe Steckler. Thank you for joining our program today. I'd like to remind you that our senior information line is available to you at 321-473-7770. There you can get help and direction that could be helpful for your specific situation or circumstances. The work of helping seniors is very important, but we can't do it alone. That is why our sponsors here in Brevard County are so important. I'd like to thank our many area sponsors, businesses and medical providers who support the mission of helping seniors that help us carry the cost of our media efforts. If you'd like to join us either as a business partner or simply donate as an individual, we would welcome your call at 321-473-7770. You are always welcome to visit our website at www.helpingseniorsofbrevard.org. Thanks so much for your help. It does make a difference.